Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Inverclyde Local Police and Fire Scrutiny Panel. I need to read out a convener statement. Welcome to this meeting. This meeting has been held remotely and also in person, and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcasts available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Lindsay, do we have any apologies or substitutions?
No apologies for absence been intimated. Can we ever move to roll call?
Yes, please.
Can the following members please indicate if they are present at the meeting either in person or remotely? Councillor Brennan.
Present remotely.
Councillor Clopperty.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Crowther.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Daisley.
Present remotely.
Councillor Law. Councillor Maguire.
Present remotely.
Provost Mackenzie.
In the chamber.
Councillor Moran.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Quinn. Present in chamber. Councillor Reynolds.
Present remotely.
Councillor Wilson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Lindsay. With your permission, colleagues, I would like to change the agenda slightly. We have with us Sergeant Mary Wilson and Detective Sergeant Derek Laird from the Cyber Crime Squad. And as they need to get back to Glasgow, are you happy to take them first on the agenda?
Yes, great.
Thank you. Mary and Derek, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for having us here today. It's a pleasure to speak with you. I am Mary Wilson. I'm one of the sergeants in the Police Scotland Cybercrime and Harm Prevention Team, which sits within the Partnerships Prevention and Community Wellbeing Division. I'm here today to give you an overview of what my team do and how to support local policing. My unit are a small national team comprising of just one inspector, 2 sergeants, 2 constables based in the west, 1 constable based in the east, and 1 constable based in the north. We're also supported by 2 civilian protect officers. My team cover a wide portfolio and a variety of cyber-enabled and cyber-dependent harms. The difference with those being cyber-dependent is where it takes a computer to have an effect on another computer, and cyber-enabled is your more traditional crimes which are carried out through the use of an internet-enabled device. So crimes that have been around for a long, long time, but we now do them through the internet, such as stalking, threats, abuse. Our main unit includes target hardening the public, private and third sector against cyber attack, in particular critical national infrastructure, to ensure that they have appropriate levels of protection in place and incident response and business continuity plans in the event of a cyber attack. The team work with cyber investigations to respond to and support businesses who've been affected by ransomware or network compromise, and we help the companies recover and protect against further harm. My team also work closely with the National Cybercrime Agency to deliver the Cyber Choices programme, which is designed to identify, divert and deter young people who are on the cusp of cyber criminality. We deliver interventions that support them back onto a positive and legal pathway for use of their skills. On the cyber-enabled crime side of things, which you may see in your slides there, we cover pretty much everything that happens online, from extortion, romance fraud, online child abuse and exploitation. We cover an element of cryptocurrency fraud, online abuse, cyberbullying, online safety, and into the new area of technology-assisted harmful sexual behaviour, and also domestic stalking and technology facilitated abuse. Cyber-enabled crime now accounts for around half of all crime and covers every element of online activity, from financial scams to abuse and exploitation. Our team work with a variety of partners to deliver guidance and resources and to raise awareness of these and signposting for victims. We work continually with a variety of partners to deliver up-to-date information and resources to address these issues, including with our own network of 200 school-based officers across the country for direct delivery to young people. We also regularly deliver inputs across the country at schools, community groups and businesses to raise awareness of the online harms, and we deliver preventative guidance. We've recently been involved with the Renfrewshire Children's Hearing Panel members carrying out awareness sessions of online safety and raising awareness of what the reality is of being a young person online today. We're going to be replicating this session shortly for the Argyll and Group members. And on the next slide, you can see it there. This is an indication of the partners that we work with across the country. Oh, sorry, that's not too far. Thank you. We're part of the, we're founding members of the Cyber Scotland Partnership, which is a collaborative body of 17 agencies now, including the Scottish Government, Education Scotland and the National Cyber Security Centre, and we all work together towards building a cyber resilient Scotland. We're also working with a number of national bodies across the UK, including the UK Cyber Protect and Prevent networks. My team work with each division locally across the country to discuss and address local trends and concerns, and we draw on a bank of trusted resources to ensure consistent and appropriate messaging. Where concerns are raised on a divisional level, we engage with local police to address these and provide up-to-date prevention advice and guidance. So that's a short overview of what it is my team are involved in. Pretty much everything that happens online has an effect on my team. This is a growing sphere that we are involved in, as you'll be well aware, but we try and make sure that we're touching base all across the country and to make sure that there is a response out there to everybody. I'll hand you now over to Detective Sergeant Derek Blair from Cyber Investigations.
Thank you. Derek.
Hello everyone, thanks for having us. As Sergeant Wilson had said, both ourselves and BPCW provide kind of equitable support across the cyber estate for police. Our role primarily is to provide capability to investigate significant cyber-dependent crimes. So we are part of Team Cyber UK, the national response to cybercrime, and its effect on our communities. Primarily, a lot of investigations involve ransomware, network intrusion, which you'll see a lot of in the press, data theft and insider threats within local businesses. Because we're part of the national cadre, we can essentially get support from other areas of the company and and other capabilities, particularly within other regional crime units, National Crime Agency, National Cyber Security Centre, and that then gives us further leads into international partners. It's a collaborative approach across all these areas to pursue what is a worldwide crime that has essentially been perpetuated anywhere in the globe, but has a very significant local effect. Our parallel remit is to provide investigative support and guidance to major inquiries, but also to frontline officers. So any officer that is required to get advice around about cyber dependent or significant cyber enabled investigations, and they'll come in to us to get that advice. We carry out daily intelligence review and instant monitoring to ensure that there is an equitable service being provided across the country, but primarily because of the gap in understanding of all the techniques and capabilities that we have within the police and the wider organisation. We will proactively contact those local officers to make sure that your community is getting the same service that any other community would get, and they get access to all the tools and capabilities that the police can have. We also deal with tasking, so as a senior investigating officer, you can task into us. We will deploy alongside those officers to ensure that all opportunities are made to identify and prosecute people who are within our communities who are perpetuating crime elsewhere and affecting everyone. We are the forces cryptocurrency track and trace and seizure capability. So many of your members within the community will be no doubt affected by the significant rise in cybercrime, but primarily through investment frauds, which perpetuate on social media, which my colleague is we're pushing the message to try and prevent that. However, when we are seeing it, we are seeing a remarkable increase in it, and we provide technical means to try and identify those suspects and bring them to justice. These techniques are complicated and expensive, so what we do is we have it in a small area and then provide that service to the whole country. So we have officers elsewhere in Scotland that are trained as well as Glasgow, and they provide that capability to your community. What we also do is we support delivery of training to frontline officers. So there are a variety of cadres within police which are technical training that we provide and it's bespoke to them, so they can again make best use of all the capabilities available to us. Next slide, please. So across the country, as you'll see in this slide, there are now 3 DIs, 3 detective sergeants, and a number of constables split up across the country. In essence, it's quite a small number, very technically capable, very skilled individuals, but where necessary, we will bend and flex into whatever area of the country that's needed. So routinely, I will have officers from Aberdeen and Edinburgh deploy on investigations in the West and the Euro local area to ensure that we're making best use of the resources, but where we have the threat, risk and harm identified, that we will put everybody into it. Next slide, please. We see a significant rise in cybercrime investigations for the whole country. Certainly up to 2021, there was a massive, significant increase in the investigations that we were taking on. And we have seen a small uplift in staff. What we're trying to do is educate within the front line so that they actually get a much better service at the first point of call. Where we identify jobs that are coming into our normal control room, we intercept those so that the members of the public are getting the best possible response to the ones that we can take on, essentially based on the threat risk and harm model that we're building on. You can see the significant amount of increase in critical currency investigations. Again, this is, if you were to break it down locally, it would be a similar rise, and that's why we're pushing on capabilities through technology and training in order to essentially bring people to justice if we can. Final slide, please. Recent investigations that we've had, which have been high profile, to give you a flavour of what we deal with. Donald Clark ransomware, which was obviously in the papers and significantly reported. We support on that investigation, and we led it from a Scottish perspective along with the national partners. That had a wider effect into your local communities. So if you think about the people that are then at risk of going through data compromise, and we help with that risk assessment. Prominent person had their email compromised just recently. We again provide that capability to assist them. Cryptocurrency seizure, money laundering and organised crime. And most recently there was a conspiracy to murder by somebody trying to order the services of a hitman on an dark marketplace. Again, my team that do their best to support the senior investigating officer in the local community, identify, manage that risk and then bring somebody to justice. Finally, you can see there's advice investigation support for business email compromise. That was a significant sum of money for the local authority. And again, we provide that support to the local senior investigating officer to mitigate some of those risks associated with the public funds. That's us in a nutshell. If you have any questions or would like anything, absolutely answer it.
Thank you very much, Sergeant. It's very interesting. What does DDoS mean?
Distributed denial of service. So in essence, if you think about it like a phone line, if you were to keep phoning the phone and you couldn't get through, that would affect business. This is just merely the online version of that. So they use online services to flood industry internet connection so that they can carry out their business.
Thank you. I'm looking for questions. Councillor Daisley.
Thanks, Convener. I actually think that Councillor Maguire was ahead of me there. I don't know if maybe she wants to go before me. If that's okay.
That's okay, Councillor Daisley. You can.
That's very gentlemanly, Councillor Daisley.
That's okay. It's only fair. Okay, firstly, thanks for that presentation. That was great. I only have one question. And the one question from me is, are there any specific elements of cybercrime that you believe would be a risk to Inverclyde, a community like Inverclyde?
Sergeant Wilson, are you taking this?
I am, if I can get this to. There we go. Good question, Councillor. Much the same as Detective Sergeant Laird's team, we carry out a daily audit of calls that come in, and from what we are seeing, the nature and scale of cybercrime doesn't affect one geographical area over another. The patterns and trends that we are seeing are addictive all over the country. Wherever there is an internet connection, there will be cybercrime. You will see a rise in more densely populated areas just due to the amount of reports, but cybercrime in general is greatly underreported. There are certain industries that will attract more attention than others, whenever there's money, such as oil and gas. There are higher target victims out there, so there are higher value victims out there, but the cybercrime can affect absolutely anyone, and whether it's on a personal level or a business financial level, the impact on the victim remains the same, and it's quite significant.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Daisley?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much for that answer.
Councillor Maguire?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I have 3 questions. So my first question is, I'll just do them all together because I don't think they're that complex. So the first one is, how many local businesses or organisations have you assisted across Inverclyde with ransomware attacks? Second question was just around the conviction rate. You said that 50% of crime is now cybercrime. So what's the sort of conviction rate that we're seeing with cybercrime? Is it quite low because it's hard to trace people, or is it higher than we might suspect? And then a kind of follow-on question from the conviction rate is, I was going to ask, is 50% of our police force, 50% of crime is online, is 50% of our police force working on it? And then you had the very helpful slide around the 3 teams. So do you think that 8 people are enough if it makes up 50% of the current crime rate? And is that because most of it's done online, so it's easier to kind of work in smaller teams around this, or is there another reason for that kind of smaller team of officers?
Councillor Maguire, you've been breaking up. I'm not sure if Sergeant Wilson got that.
I can type it in the chat if you want, and you can go on to somebody else.
Yes, would you mind?
Yeah,
thank you. I'll go to Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, thank you. So great presentation. It's always good to know about these people that are off in a corner doing stuff that none of us understand. Yeah, and I'm not sure we'll always understand exactly what you do. It's obviously wide and complex. Just as Inverclyde's women's champion, I've just got a couple of questions. Well, not really a question, more of a concern, and hopefully you'll be able to put my concerns to rest. And that's about sort of cyber-enabled sexual crime. So I have been doing a bit of research locally about particular cyber flashing, which is really common within Inverclyde, and I assume it's a national issue as well. So when having those conversations with a number of people, the concern that I've got is the lack of the numbers that are not reporting these crimes. So I've asked the question, if someone flashed at you in the street, what would you do? And they said, we would immediately phone the police. So I said, why are we accepting? So why are the women and girls of Inverclyde accepting these images through their mobile phones on a daily basis? And I've seen some of them, they're horrendous. These are not just pictures, they're videos. So we've got men doing sexual acts and sending it to women that have not asked for any of this. They are receiving these on a daily basis, and it's quite frightening, you know. So, and some of the research I've looked at, and we've actually looked at serious sexual crime is the entry level, you know. So I'm concerned that some of these perpetrators might actually go on, you know, they're empowered to do this and being let away with it in effect and potentially move on. Not that it isn't bad what they're doing just now, but they potentially are moving on, and you as a police service are missing that important data, you know, that you're kind of getting birth patterns forming. So really my ask is, first of all, how do we empower our women and girls and tell them, get that message out that this is not acceptable? We shouldn't as women accept a level of threat every day, which we do, and unfortunately, you know, but as women, you know, as soon as we give birth, you know, to a daughter, we start telling them that they're under a threat, you know, different from unfortunately our males. So why are women accepting this? And actually the age group, you know, because I've seen a lot of the great stuff that we're doing in schools, but actually the age group that I've been speaking to is the kind of 18 to 25. So that's potentially an area that we're missing because they're not involved, you know, in the school system. So it's getting that message out. We're not accepting this. And actually we need to, these perpetrators need to be on our database somewhere. We need to have eyes on them. Because if they are progressing to something a bit more serious, we're missing that information. So I'm kind of just leaving it. Hopefully there's stuff there and potentially something they can work on. Thanks.
Sergeant Wilson, that was a lengthy, comprehensive question. For you.
Well, it's an interesting topic. I'm glad you brought it up. It is one that we are aware of. The more technology advances, the more opportunities it does offer for offending. The sheer simplicity now of being able to send messages anonymously does create an environment where offenders can feel anonymous and that they would do things online that they would not necessarily do in public. This is not my area of expertise, so I can't offer a full answer to this. But the variety of sexual crimes that we do see online vary greatly. You're saying there about women being the victims. It's actually young males who are some of the greatest amount of victims for certain types, for example, sextortion online. Women are more likely to, young girls being groomed and shared images tend to be the age of 9 to 13 just now, which is getting younger. And for cyberflashing, as you're saying there, that can depend on built up areas. We see it tend to be on transport hubs quite a lot. It's a conversation we need to keep having with people, the preventative advice we would give, and it's not quite what you probably want to hear, but it is down to like your own phone settings, your own device settings, where you can go in and configure them to stop that unwanted contact coming in. I absolutely agree with you that it's not the responsibility of women to stop them consenting. It should be society understanding that's unacceptable behaviour. Excuse me. And we shouldn't be allowing this in the first place. It is a difficult crime to investigate. Again, not my area, so I won't go into it too much, but the spontaneity of it and the technology behind it all, it's a difficult one to progress. But the first thing would be to keep having people have those conversations, and it's not acceptable and they should be reporting it. But to stop it happening in the first place, there are measures that can be taken, and that is something that we discuss when I go out to different groups to protect yourself from being a victim. It's unfortunate, but it's the same we discuss about, you know, don't go on your own, stay with your friends, talk to each other, communicate. It's unfortunate that's the discussion we're still having, and it's moving into the online sphere. But prevention is a big part of approaching that element of things. But it's a societal issue, I would say, at this time.
Okay, Councillor Quinn.
Just from a
Oh,
previous,
sorry, Sergeant.
just from a previous role until some of the parts there. So I picked up the importance of people reporting this isn't just for a data exercise. I think it's important to over that if we can get them identified as victims, we can ensure that there's that proper safeguarding going about them. We would always pursue the offenders as best we can. There are layers of which that would happen, both at a local level, national level, and an international level. And there are multiple layers to that allow us to pursue these offenders. So all I would say is that if people are coming forward to report it, they will treat it seriously, we will engage, we will provide them that level of support and advice, signposts and other support agencies. But it's absolutely not a data exercise. If we don't know about it, we can't pursue people and we can't manage that risk.
Okay.
Nina, would you mind if I come in?
Sorry?
Would you mind if I come in the back of that?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So just for everybody's awareness, the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy has been presented by the Chief Constable at SPA board today, and hopefully it's already been through Police and Performance Committee, so hopefully that will be approved today. And that, you know, that's the kind of things that we want to re-educate people and re-educate the public round about. As colleagues have said, it's completely unacceptable, and we would encourage anybody to come forward and report anything like that. But ultimately, that would then allow us to pursue perpetrators, because you're absolutely right, there's a potential for them to move on to contact offences eventually. and we absolutely want to guard against that and prevent that. But being able to pursue them, hopefully get a conviction at court, then allows a sheriff, to get rid of whether or not they should be a registered sex offender, and clearly we have really strict protocols in terms of how to manage those types of offenders once we're given that opportunity. So, as I say, it's probably one convener I don't know if you'd be amenable to it, but maybe bringing a spotlight back on violence against women and girls strategy at some point in the future, because I think it's something that's really prevalent in society today in terms of what Police Scotland are doing in terms of trying to re-educate potential perpetrators, how people can keep themselves safe, and the work that Police Scotland are doing, if you're amenable to that.
I think that would be good, Tony, if you could pencil it in for a future meeting on violence against women and girls. I think I've had requests about that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Provost?
Sorry, just
Of course you can.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's probably an education piece here,
Thanks.
because you can only do your job if it's been reported. So I think that's key here, is to get that education piece out, and that's probably something as a council we could maybe help with as well, to say this is unacceptable, please report it. It will be taken seriously. So I think that's first. You can only do it if you receive those reports. So I think that you can probably play a part as well. Thank you.
Thanks for raising that, Provost.
Thank you, Convener. When it comes to cybercrime, of course, it's got no borders, and I would reckon that a lot of cybercrime probably emanates from beyond these shores. We've all probably had the thing where you get a foreign voice wanting to take over your computer from Microsoft, and they've found a virus or something. How vast does, you've mentioned the small team you have here in Scotland, but how vast do you cooperate internationally with other police forces?
So yeah, thank you for that question. What I would say is, it absolutely is borderless, but we do have offenders within the UK who are technically capable and able to carry out these attacks. We do have Scottish offenders. We do have offenders within the west of Scotland that will be perpetuating these crimes. However, what I would say is, because of the international aspects of it, we essentially have joint working between ourselves, Europol and Interpol, and those relationships still exist. We work closely with all the major countries that you would anticipate that we would have, and the agencies that they have under their command. And we regularly share intelligence, share tasking, and essentially move investigations around the world in order that we can achieve a criminal justice outcome. In the papers only a matter of weeks ago, there was somebody arrested on the back of a Police Scotland investigation, but they were arrested in America, and that was through that joint cooperation. So we regularly use our influence and connections within Europe and America and Interpol, etc., to essentially get a good outcome for Scottish.
And is there some worldwide hotspot from it? You could say, is there a big call centre in India where it's all emanated from?
I understand why you would ask such a question. I don't think I'm in a position to answer that. I don't think it's appropriate for me to answer it because of the nature of the threat. However, if you were to read recent National Cyber Security Centre bulletins that are published regularly, they would probably give you a better threat assessment for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Moran,
Thank
and then Councillor Brennan, and then I'll go to Natasha.
you. My question would be on cyberbullying. I was watching a programme and the young people concerned, the likes of the Hill, because they said it wasn't finishing at the school gate and even at 4 o'clock on a Friday. It was going right through the weekend, and they were really unhappy. Some were even attempted suicide because of this cyberbullying. Obviously, well, my question to the police, and of course to Tony here, when do you escalate cyberbullying at school to a level where the police will be involved to take action to try and fix the situation that these young people find themselves in? Do the school just deal with it up to a certain point, or when does the police become involved in it to try and alleviate the situation which a lot of these young people find themselves in, which is really, really horrible for them? So I suppose my question is, there is a partnership work between the schools and the police for that?
Tony, would you like to answer? please.
Through your convener, the school would work really closely with the police and any aspect of criminality escalation, the police would be involved in that. So we obviously, the council has its own anti-bullying strategy and the policy associated with that, but it goes for anything that happens within schools. If there's an element of criminality, through criminalising the young people, the police will often be involved, so the partnership working between the schools and the police is really close.
Okay, Robert?
All right, thank you.
Councillor Brennan, I see your hands up.
Thanks very much, convener. Yeah, I had reached out previously to Councillor Wilson as a male ally and requested a spotlight on the violence against women and girls strategy. So I was really delighted that Councillor Wilson was so open to that and generous in requesting it. So that's great. In one of the slides, I think I saw a list of cybercrime partners that your unit works with. And I noticed, so the Scotland team is mentioned and a London team, but no other regional or national units. And I just wondered what the thinking was behind that, or the reason, if there was any specific reason for that.
Thank you.
Sergeants?
Thank you. We work with a variety of partners, and that list is not exhaustive. The London ones are listed, so the City of London Police take point on financial crime across the UK, and UK Cyber Protect and Prevent networks include representatives from all 4 nations.
Right.
Okay, Francesca?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming along. I'll go to Natasha. I'll read out what Natasha said. Something, your voice was breaking up, Natasha. Your question is, how is it so hard to catch people when all our devices have MAC addresses and IMEI numbers? You look kind of resigned to that one.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. So we could probably give a lecture on it on its own, and most of it would probably be divulging tactics and capabilities that we probably wouldn't want to discuss in an open forum. Broadly, I could say that it's not quite as straightforward as that. Technical inquiries require layers of authorities, use of legislation and cooperation of international companies who all have varying abilities to collaborate with the police and develop varying differences in what they will provide. So to say it's complicated is probably an understatement. However, across the police, we have training to allow us to make those assessments. It's not just our team that would investigate those. Those lines of inquiry exist within all major crime teams, all intelligence teams, and most of the detectives within the force are capable of doing those inquiries to some extent. Where they can't, then there's a national network to try and assist in pursuing people who are a little bit more technically able. So all I would say is it's very complicated, but if you require more information, I'm sure we could arrange something.
Thank you, Sergeant. Okay, Natasha?
Yes, Councillor Wilson, I've actually put a headset in, so I put my original 3 questions in the chat. That was a follow-up question from what Councillor Quinn had said. So can you hear me okay now, and can I ask those other questions now?
Try again, keep it short.
I will do. So there's 3 questions. So the first one is, how many local businesses or organisations have had assistance because of a ransomware attack by the police? Not by the police, but from how many organisations have you helped that have been a victim of ransomware attacks? And my second question, I suppose, is if 50% of crime is now online or cyber, why is it such a small workforce? And the third one is about the conviction rate. So is it comparable to similar in-person crimes?
So that's helping local businesses and the question about your workforce numbers.
Yep, and conviction rate. Thank you, convener.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Firstly, I don't have conviction rates immediately to hand, but to be honest, the numbers don't appear high in relation to ransomware, just purely because of its international reach and nature. There is often a massive lag between the incident occurring and then bringing someone to a judicial outcome. And then it's also what is the judicial outcome that would be appropriate for a local community. Some of the crime groups operate in areas of the world where we do not have any legal means or recourse. And that's where at a national level and at an international level we look at sanctions and other measures and levies to try and reduce the threat against the UK. So we don't get conventional outcomes sometimes, but we do get unconventional ones that potentially disrupt and deter these groups or individuals. From a local point of view, what I would say is if there was a ransomware incident in your area, we would deploy to it. We do take on every ransomware, at least at the very initial stages. We provide that support, guidance. Both teams would deploy to support. If I didn't have appropriate resources within government to deploy, then we would deploy remotely or in person from other offices, be it Aberdeen or Edinburgh. And then finally, the 50% of cybercrime you're going to cover. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So your concern was if there's such a high volume of cybercrime, why is there such a small team dedicated to it? Again, it's not quite as simple as that. The roughly half having the cybercrime, it's a cyber element to it, so it's still traditional crime, but there's an online element. So it could be a domestic incident, it could be an assault, it could be threats, and fraud is massive, especially online fraud just now, which is where we reach the scale of so much crime can be classed as cyber enabled. From the vast majority of those, they can still be dealt with by police officers who would attend to any other call that comes in. They don't require specialist knowledge to be dealt with, and police officers do have a solid understanding of what's going on and they can attend to those. The small amount of people in my team, we are designed as a national unit who work closely with other national teams, and we provide a central stream of information and resources that can be spread out to all officers across Scotland. We tie in on a divisional and local level. If it's individual officers seeking guidance, they can ask us, and if divisional areas have a particular concern, we can assist them as well. So it's by no means 8 people taking on half of all the crime that's reported in Scotland. It is very much a partnership and a network, and we just share the knowledge whenever it's required.
Thank you. Okay, Natasha?
Yes, thank you very much for indulging me, Chair, and thank you for your responses.
Thank you, Natasha. Well, I don't see any more questions. Thank you very much, Sergeant Wilson and Sergeant Laird. That was very, very interesting and informative. You're now free to go.
Thank you.
Lindsay, would you escort the 2 sergeants off the premises, please? Diane, will you do it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Will your change say, Thomas?
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Thanks again to Chief Superintendent, the Chief Inspector for organising that. That was extremely worthwhile, I think, wasn't it? I think these sessions are very useful about what else goes on within the Police Scotland. I forgot to say earlier on who else we had with us from the Fire and Rescue Service. We have got Area Commander Carey, who we know, and the Area Group Commander Story, who looks after Renfrewshire, East Renfrewshire and Inverclyde. And I think we'll move to that agenda item now with a presentation on reducing unwanted fire alarm signals. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'm just going to invite Paul to go through the presentation yourself. So I'll give you a bit of an introduction to that. My former role was the National Reporting Coordinator. So I've been around the domestic environment for quite some time. So and you've asked the role on the first year last week, which is great but since coming back to Inverclyde initially now to other local authorities, the one question very rarely comes up at committee is around the economic cost. It's on page 2 of here, the report. and the report of the member credit is about £190,000, which is an indicative cost. Really, unwanted firearms segment cost roughly £2,000 based on the most recent economic statistics, and each business would cost about £850. For some reason, internal and external involved accepted that as a cost, but now more than ever thought that £290,000 revenue budget probably we have a different conversation, but we just let it happen. Whilst it's reassuring for members of the public to see any emergency service underemployees through the streets of Inverclyde or across the communities of Scotland, if it's an unnecessary motor journey, then that's an increasing risk to road users, to our airlines in this case. It's having an impact on the environment, it's having an impact on cost. But more importantly, it's time spent with firefighters to do something else. So probably take you through that presentation. But I think it's important to stress what this isn't. And I think when we first talked about alarm systems or flat alarms, I know we probably were advocating switch off that alarm system. And I was trying to keep the council opinion straight away. This is what I'll maybe explain that. And what we are doing is just completing the circle of what already happens. So if that firearms go off in one of the premises down, what will happen is that premises will evacuate, premises staff on site will investigate because of that, and 98% of the cases also are. So the system's done its job. It's done its job. It's getting early detection of what people are evacuating the building. But what's happening is 2, 3, 4 appliances are travelling through the streets under the lights, are arriving at democracy and being told this is what's happened, the call point, somebody's been spraying, whatever it is. We then go back to the panel with the duty holder, the people responsible for that building. It's their panel, we don't have a traffic panel, they will reset it, and then everybody goes back into the building. So what this UFAS introduction in simple terms is, we're asking the responsible person for these buildings to just go out and say the beach. That's it, the simplest form. Where there's any doubt, or where there's no confirmation, we will still attend with the flow, we get response at pre-tender games. So I want the collective to take comfort that all that change that we're going to job on and we probably can't talk about, but it's in our DNA to keep people safe, and we will not proposing that we're going to safe. And even after the 1st of July, this is a process that we're going on for review constantly. So that's what I'm talking about. I'll take you through the presentation. Thanks, David.
Yep, you're on.
Just to make awareness, this is a national initiative. It's not just that we do in Clyde, and probably give a bit of comfort. That means that you're able to speak to people from other authorities and how they're actually putting things in place for this change. But I'm going to go through the presentation and take some questions at the end if there are any. So from the 1st of July 2023, Scottish Fire and Rescue will change how it responds to reports of automatic fire alarm activations, and that will realise a number of benefits for both the Fire and Rescue Service and the wider public. This presentation will provide some background information on why we are changing the response model and how the new model was agreed upon. It will also detail what the new response model is, including exemptions, as well as providing some recommended actions for duty holders to prepare themselves for the pending change. Thank you. So the current position is that the Fire and Rescue Service attends more than 28,000 incidents each year that turn out to be unwanted fire alarm signals or UFAS, accounting for 31% of operational activity. UFAS has been a problem for the Fire and Rescue Service for some time, and despite attempts through policy changes and greater engagement with premises generating high numbers of UFAS, they have continued to increase. To best tackle the long-term challenge of increasing numbers of UFAS incidents, the recommendation to prioritise an evaluation of response options to automatic fire alarm activations was progressed. Considering a report approach alongside the approaches already employed by other UK fire and rescue services, we initially identified 15 response options that were taken to 2 staff review group workshops in October 2020, where they were assessed and scored to reduce the options from 15 down to 5. These 5 options were then tested at an independently facilitated stakeholders options appraisal workshop in February 2021, where again the options were assessed and scored on the balance of benefits and risks the three options that provided the best balance of benefit versus risk, whilst also delivering a significant reduction in youth numbers, was taken to the public for consultation. The public consultation on the three options ran for 12 weeks from the 19th of July to 11th of October 2021. At the end of the consultation, the responses were analysed, deemed and discussed, with relevant suggestions and recommendations included in the SFRN board approval paper. 66% of respondents chose option A as a preferred model. At its meeting on the 16th of December 2021, the SFRN board agreed to implement option A with additional exemptions and an extension on the implementation date back to the 1st of April 2023. The additional exemption aligned hospital sleeping areas, wards, theatres, etc., with residential care homes, i.e. still getting 2 planks attendance regardless of time, while the extended implementation date acknowledged the work that organisations with large capabilities would require them to take into consideration for youth and next slide, please. On the 1st of July 2023, we will stop attending automatic fire alarm call-outs to commercial business and workplace premises such as factories, offices, shops and leisure facilities unless the fire has been confirmed. Our control room operators will now be asking anyone who reports a fire alarm to check whether there's an actual fire or signs of fire before sending the nearest fire appliance. This change does not apply to sleeping premises such as hospitals, care homes, hotels or domestic dwellings. We will still receive the full predetermined attendance. Slide, please. In previous slides, we mentioned that no response will be sent unless there is a confirmed fire or sign of fire. As well as the obvious indicators of smoke, flame and heat, there are also strong technological indicators. The majority of coverage provided by automatic fire alarm systems is by smoke detector, which are more prone to accidental activation from fire-like phenomena such as dust, aerosols, steam, insects, etc. However, where the system includes other types of detection, suppression or alarm, and these can be identified at the alarm panel as the source of the activation, this detail should be passed to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Control operators as they too are considered strong indicators. These are activations generated by heat detectors, multi-criteria detectors usually detect smoke, heat and carbon monoxide before the head will activate. Manual call point or break pass points, although these can also be prone to malicious activation. Sprinkler head activation, where the panel indicates either multiple heads are indicated, including smoke detector, or multiple drones going into alarm. This is also a strong indicator for fire. Where no sign of fire can be determined, the activation will be investigated for a response. Next slide, please. When a call is received reporting an alarm activation, whether from a premise or by an alarm receiving centre, Fire and Rescue Service control operator will confirm that an investigation into the cause has been taken prior to taking any mobilising action. With appropriate training, duty holders should safely investigate the cause of activations of commercial businesses and workplace premises prior to calling 999. Calling 999 prior to investigating the cause will only lead to potential delays in responding to confirmed fires. Sleeping risk premises should prioritise alerting fire service, but should consider procedures to safely investigate activations to minimise impact on those evacuating and being evacuated, as well as the responding fire rescue crews. Even where a premise are covered by a remote monitoring organisation alarm receiving centre, duty holders should still ensure activations are investigated appropriately and followed up with a call to the alarm receiving centre or Fire and Rescue Service. I am cancelling the alarm call from the confirmed fire. Premises covered by an alarm receiving centre who do not investigate the risk further delay in response to confirmed fires, as it will be requested to recontact the premise to confirm the cause of the activation. Engagement with the alarm receiving centres will encourage them to undertake their own version of call challenging, where they follow a similar process of confirming the cause of the activation prior to passing the call to Fire and Rescue Service and moving into the live to an incident. Next slide, please. It is estimated that each false alarm causes an average of 27 minutes business interruption while staff evacuate, fire and rescue respond and investigate, and staff subsequently return to work. An average cost of £848 for false alarm. While 27 minutes is the average for disruption to business, those with more rural areas covered by on-call firefighters with longer response times will have longer disruption times. Fire and Rescue Service will have resources available to respond to any confirmed emergency incidents. The new response model will also create almost 9,000 hours, allowing firefighters more time to focus on upskilling and training and prevention work. The change in estimate is estimated to reduce blue light illness to automatic fire alarm call by 57%, reducing the associated risk to both fire and rescue employees and the wider public, as well as reducing carbon emissions by an estimated 351 tonnes. Fire and Rescue Service has over 3,000 on-call firefighters who respond to emergency incidents as secondary employment. Primary employers not only allow these firefighters to leave their primary workplace to support or response to these incidents, reducing the impact of UFAS will have a positive impact on these employers. Next slide, please. Part 3 of the Fire Scotland Act 2005, along with the Fire Safety Scotland Act Regulation 2006, sets out fire safety duties in respect of the majority of non-domestic premises in Scotland. The legislation requires the provision of fire safety measures, including risk reduction measures, means of fire warning, firefighting, escape, staff training and instruction, as well as emergency procedures. It sets out fire safety responsibilities and seeks to ensure the safety of persons from harm caused by fire. General requirements those under the Act include assessing the risk from fire in respect of the premise, identifying the fire safety measures necessary as a result of assessment of the risk, implementing these fire safety measures, using risk reduction principles, putting in place fire safety arrangements for the ongoing control and review of fire safety measures, complying additionally with the specific requirements of fire safety regulations, keeping the fire safety risk assessment and outcome under review, record keeping. Responsibility for complying with fire safety duties in premises sits with the employer and other persons who operate or have control of premises to any extent. This may include managing agents, landlords and tenants, factors, owners and managers and staff. Contractors and volunteers working on the site may also have some responsibilities through their associated risk to both through the associated degree of control or responsibility of safety systems. Persons with fire safety responsibilities are referred to as duty holders. Under the fire safety law, all duty holders are required to take a responsible measure regarding the safety of persons. Employers additionally have a specific obligation to ensure the safety of employees in the event of fire. Fire is reasonably attractive where premises or responsibilities are shared. Each employer or other duty holder who has control over any part of the premise is required to cooperate and coordinate in respect of the fire safety law and to inform each other of risks and prepare appropriate evacuation procedures. Next slide, please. To prepare themselves for the new response model, duty holders should consider the following 8 actions. Identifying the premises. Duty holders should have a clear understanding of the buildings under their control, which are deemed relevant and that will be affected by a new approach. When all premises are identified, the duty holder should then carry out a full review of the premises fire safety arrangements to ensure that they remain appropriate. A review of fire safety policy. There should be a clearly defined fire safety policy which includes arrangements for planning, organisation, control, monitoring and review of fire safety measures. In multi-occupied premises, there is a need for coordination between occupiers to account for the overall fire safety arrangements. A review should be carried out of the existing fire safety policy with account of any change or approach to fire safety within your organisation. The review of the fire risk assessment for these premises. Premises fire risk assessment is the most important document for the building and should be reviewed to ensure all new risks have been identified and to ensure that existing fire safety arrangements remain appropriate. Persons within the Emergency Fire Action Plan. An Emergency Fire Action Plan sets out the action that staff and other people in the premises should take in the event of a fire. It is a management responsibility to have in place an Emergency Fire Action Plan specific to the premise to have in place the input to implement the plan. In multi-occupied premises, the Emergency Fire Action Plan will need to be coordinated between all occupiers. There should be an adequate number of trained persons responsible for supervising and implementing the Emergency Fire Action Plan. The emergency evacuation is a duty holder's responsibility, and the plan should not rely on the attendance of fire and rescue service to work. The existing fire action plan for the premise being to be amended to reflect any new procedures for investigating a fire alarm signal and ensure that backup 999 call is embedded within the plan. Duty holders may consider the utilisation of staged or staff alarms as a method of minimising false alarms. With a staged alarm system, an initial staff alarm may be given before the general alarm is given. This gives time for investigation purposes to be carried out prior to pre-arranged actions. Normally, staff alarms are restricted to signals from smoke detectors and an evacuation signal is given from a manual call point, heat detector, or a sprinkler head base.
We are going to be on the next slide. What I want to do with this slide, this is a national presentation. These duty holder actions are what should already be in place. I don't want to move anything with this. So this stuff for duty holders to do in terms of fire safety are what should already be in place.
But these are not new.
These are not new. So just to say that I just wanted to. So
that was going to be my question.
Thinking this is a lot for us to do, just to be absolutely clear, this is what is already in place for normal duty holders to comply with the application.
We trust the fire service, but not necessarily the duty holder.
Well, that's why we really like it. That's why we need a lawyer.
Just to move on to the next slide. So, as David said, there's been a lot of engagement with duty holders in the run-up to the implementation of this. So I hope the presentation provided with an overview of the changes. If you want to take any questions regarding that now.
No, the group commander or the commander answered my question.
Absorb all that information again.
Sorry?
Paul mentioned there about a lot of the stakeholder engagement. The service delivered a online event for duty holders. Now, you know, with the people that's here, it's 20 minutes long, so I wouldn't expect yourself for any businesses locally to sit for that period of time. However, an hour of it is done on behalf of the duty holders by Colin Todd, who's one of the world leading experts in fire safety, and that hour is well worth watching. To provide reassurance to duty holders and give some contextual information from a perspective. Bear in mind that every time an alarm goes off, even if it was a fire, it's in very early stages. So a lot of the times when we ask people, and we have done for years, to investigate, they will come back and say, "Oh, staff, I'm in an alarm," but we would never promote that. But in the vast majority of cases, 98% is that it's a false alarm. But that online sessions available through our website.
Thank you. Councillor Crowther.
Thank you, Convener. It's really just like an observation more than anything else. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for the paper. One bit that was a surprise was under 3 responsibilities, whereby it says that you have no legal responsibility to respond to the AFA activating. The reason I'm saying that I'm surprised at that is that one of the previous places of employment, I had noticed that the duty holder, when the automatic fire alarm had activated, that they had called up Johnson, but the fire brigade still come out, and that's the reason why that I do look in the paper, because I understand the amount of man-hours that are put into these false calls, but also the expense. The other point is that when it comes to monitoring it, I take it that you will still be recording the number of alarms that have been activated, and you will then be putting in the number of calls that are false.
Absolutely. Current reporting criteria so that we have a thing called 24-hour overview, which will give us the data from the day before, and part of those, part of that criteria councillor is called cameras not mobilised. So it's something we have done for years in the old days with the phone boxes we could use the phone at shout 5. This is a well-trodden path called challenging, but it's never done it for anyone firearm signals, and the point at which was 57% of our activity things across the organisation. But essentially, this isn't just about the safety of the public and the safety of our personnel. If we are to move the fire and rescue into a different footing and look like a fire and rescue service in the future, this will give us the capacity to be able to do that. So it's freeing up time more than anything as well for us to do something different. But no, it's something, it's data that we'll have to capture before council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Moran.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm broadly happy with the support. As someone who in their life done a lot of accident emergency training, obviously offshore, but I worked with two big electronic firms and British Aerosystems, where they all had their own emergency response team, and I was part of that. But what did it to take a place of the fire service? We had to enhance what needed, and it made people take responsibility for their own premises to make sure that the right personnel in place who could train them up to a high level where they would help the situation if it developed in a way of emergency. And during that period, we were very fortunate. We were taken into the Greenock fire station and we met the officers there. We were given some training as well. And there was that partnership. So my question would be is, will you go into partnership if a firm we were trying to establish an action emergency team, and what it's somebody's skills, they could approach you and you take them in, give them a bit of advice on that, maybe in a bit of training?
So the vision that we asked allowed us to provide advice and education, which just said training, not so much, but that's not to say we couldn't advise again. As a book, this is really about putting responsibility back to the children, because ideally we would take the site to have some retail premises where they actually have what's called a staff alarm. So we're not taking that into the staff alarm just yet, but what we have in some retail settings is the ability for local teams to investigate with the alarm and what's called pre-alarm. So nobody within the building, if it's going right now, we wouldn't know anything about it, teams would go check it, and go back and silence the alarm. That is ideal in the state, but it's not appropriate for every type of premises. It works in the retail environment, it allows the retailers to keep customers in the shop. And then if they don't get it in that predetermined time, or did they set the panel with the board with the full alarm, and then the evacuation is normal. So you can imagine, and I've spoken to one of the head teachers within Inverclyde about different hazards and challenges, but you can imagine that situation and a process being put in place within the school environment, that it would be completely uninterrupted term time and class time for the pupils, and that has to be a good thing. But also does, when you get to that end state, and I'm not proposing it just now, if you get to that end state, it also means that at the time that the board goes into full alarm, people are not desensitised to it. As you find just now with your top reporters, when people, the alarms going off on a fairly regular basis, people become desensitised to it. So this is an added benefit that when that alarm goes off, people will know that you need to get out.
Yeah, it will help in this building. Natasha, Councillor Maguire.
Thank you. My question is just around, you've explained quite thoroughly how there's not going to be any additional risk because of the high number of accidental calls. My question is around, with all the extra hours and time that the fire service has, can we have a guarantee locally that there won't be a reduction in the number of fire personnel that we've got?
Commander?
Thank you for the question.
Sorry, I had to ask it.
This is absolutely not about a reduction in personnel. It's been an area of the business where we have always, because I've been working for Christmas fire rescue, I've always been looking to reduce demand and stop fires and reduce traffic runs. And this is one area where we have done some good work around be aware of the 5 local initiatives. We've done locally with the NHS, but it is small pockets of success. We've never really grasped the nettle fully with our fire alarm signals. And we know this isn't just about surrounding safety of people external to the organisation. This is learned behaviour that we've had to be able to go into and within fire and rescue as well. But there is an opportunity to, yeah, absolutely quantify the extra time we have, but it's about training our staff. It's about looking at developing the role of the firefighters, and this will give us the opportunity to do that, because it will stop that time where training either being disrupted, but it will give them more time to develop fire and rescue more time in the future. But it was absolutely not about reducing the things.
Councillor Brennan?
Thanks very much. I was just wanting to check, in my reading about this change, it seems like it's not really anything new everywhere else in the UK, that it's really just bringing Scotland into line with the rest of Britain. So I'm just wondering if we can cast any light on why Scotland was different up till now. Is it fair to say we were behind the rest of the UK, or what the thinking was about that? I don't know if the presenters can shed any light on that. That would be great.
Gentlemen?
You're absolutely right, Councillor. There are some services in other parts of the UK that go even further than we have. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and some of the and most of the legacy services prior to that have always given commitment and will always receive at least one appliance under blue lights. There have been, obviously, COVID's had an impact in delays implementation of this, and then obviously more recently with that industrialisation, that process had been going on behind the scenes. But the absolute right in your first comment, nothing is really changing here. As I said right at the start, one thing this youth act can do is really to want to start on the duty holders. We have the responsibility in the Senate 53-54 for them to run a business. We also have, in part of the domestic part, you see within your normal scrutiny report, we have protection officers deploying out to schools, to care homes to do that annual fire safety audit, and this will form part of that discussion now. How are they finding youth, how are they implementing and how do they assist them? That's always been our job, is to go from that one domestic side to the protection role to make sure they can safely support them.
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Ronnie, do you want to say about what Inverclyde Council are doing about this?
Yeah, so just in preparation for this new protocol coming in, our health and safety team convened a working group because of the implications obviously for schools and all that council buildings and facilities, to make sure that we're ready for this, because this, you know, it's not in the report, but schools are quite high. I suppose the high instances of UFAS exist in schools, more probably second most behind hospitals. So it's important that we get ready, because the duty holders will be janitors, perhaps head teachers, and responsibility to schools. So we're undertaking that work just now in the hope that the time is considered we know what to do.
Good, thank you very much for that.
You know, we talked about schools and the best increase as well as one of the head teachers within Inverclyde State. Everybody really nice and comfortable to right with the model would be a nursery. Also followed by a primary school and then secondary school. They are very uniform in how they activate the buildings. I would like to get to a point that we could bottom out staff alarms in education tests. As I say, I've been proud to keep working the side of it. So we used to call them offenders, we don't call them what's true. So it goes hospital, care sector, offices, and then it's primary schools first and secondary schools second for actuations in terms of the top. So we work with education to see, listen, ideally we get to end state where we have processes in place, and I get numbers are older and staff numbers maybe right, we might not be able to support it. But if we can find even one school that we could implement a staff alarm to keep young people in class, I think that'd be a massive.
Over to you, Tony.
Yeah, looking forward to working with the fire service.
You've got a week.
I'm not proposing that at this stage.
Is that okay, Councillor Clougherty? from the convener.
Get your tea.
Thank you very much for that, gentlemen. That was excellent. I think we move on to the police now. We have with us today, we have Chief Superintendent Laura Waddle and Chief Inspector Damien Kane. Now, it's the performance report first. Who's going to do that? Chief Super,
Yes, I'll kick off.
you're using the position.
And then I'll hand over to my able-bodied colleague here.
Right.
So the performance reporting period that we're going to be discussing is the 1st of April last year until the 31st of December. And I'll give my usual caveat that the figures that are contained are compared on 5-year averages, which obviously takes in the period of the pandemic, so that they're not quite as accurate as we would normally like. But it is overall a positive picture. Total crime is down by 7.6%, recorded at 4,515 crimes. And we're also down 12.5% in terms of the volume of incidents that we've had reported as well. And I'm pleased to say that domestic abuse is down by 5.4%. Overall, our violent crimes also down by 3.2%. Sexual crimes down by 8.9%, and disorder is down quite significantly by 29%. Along with our house breakings down at 11.6%. So a couple of outliers for this reporting period are the road traffic casualties, which you'll see are up by 17.1%, and our missing people, which is up by 138.7%. And I'll hand over to Damien in a second to just provide a wee bit further detail in relation to that, but the kind of positive aspect of that the majority are down, but as I say, I give that with the caveat that a lot of this is compared to years when we experienced the pandemic in relation to it. So I'll hand over to Damien and he'll give a bit further detail, and thereafter we'll be happy, convener, to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. And you will come back in when we move on to the police and fire scrutiny panel.
I will.
Damien.
Thanks, convener. In terms of the disorder, the commanders pointed out it's down 29%, which is pretty massive decrease in disorder. It doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen without people phoning in, working with partners. We've done a lot of work around this reporting period. The main one's probably to focus on is festive period. We all know crime, disorder tends to rise, a lot more people go out drinking, we do get a lot more fights and disorder, and the police do a good job of dealing with that. We don't do it ourselves. Work closely with the partners in education, putting out messaging before the school holidays, to try and avoid kids gathering in certain areas. That contributes to the reductions in disorder we've touched on. Done a lot of work with BTP, British Transport Police, around the focal points for kind of youths gathering. We've worked with the wardens. We've very diligently turned up with our body cams and our personnel to try and reduce rates of disorder and violence around peak areas like food outlets, where we've done a bit of analysis that shows these are areas that we can prevent crime. I think we've done a fairly good job along with our partners. As the commander mentioned, one of the areas which is unfortunately still quite high, lower than the last scrutiny board we had, is missing people. Now, there's a number of factors in this, and we've discussed this quite a lot at the last board, so I'll keep this quite brief. But again, similar to before, there's 148 missing people during this 9-month reporting period. But in context, the top 5 were all juveniles under 18 years of age, who are all, and these 5 are all voluntarily missing. They make up 38 of these reports. Quite a significant number is down to a very limited number of juveniles. We do what we can with education partners and care units to try and reduce these absconding occasions, but we have some challenges in that area. The housebreaking the commanders touched on, a point you may know if you're eagle-eyed and look through the report. The report references housebreaking being down almost 12%. As the commander pointed out, that is against the 5-year average. Sadly, there was a slight increase from the year before, and that was relating to non-residential premises. There was a significant increase in that area, and that occurred mainly around November, December, so right at the tail end of this reporting period. So what was put in place back then was, having highlighted that, there was a group of uniformed plainclothes and CID officers put on a short-term task force, and they quite diligently and quickly identified one main offender for that, who was arrested shortly after Christmas, if I remember right, and he was prosecuted for 14 non-residential premises, which had quite significant values. What was been stolen wasn't particularly high in value, but the damage caused to the business was significant, especially over Christmas. So I'm confident that future panels will see that reduction continue to tail off due to the good work with the local CID and uniform cops. One of the things that's quite unfortunate, there's a continued rise in drug deaths. If you notice in the report, there's 21 confirmed drug-related deaths, which is a significant increase from the year before when we had 16. Now, this is sadly a kind of age-old problem, and Inverclyde has historically had quite a high instance of drug death, despite a lot of good partnership work and prevention work being put in place. One of the things that the police have brought in fairly recently, you'll know with the naloxone, was rolled out as a pilot last year, and it was met with great success. That's now been rolled out as of the start of February locally in Renfrewshire and Inverclyde Division. We've rolled it out to all constable, sergeant, inspector and the response police, and by that I mean those that answer your 999 calls 24 hours a day. So I don't have any immediate statistics on how many times we've used it, but that's something I think in future, if we let that bed in for a number of months, I'm quite confident we can come back and maybe give you a greater picture on how well that's been done. It's not to take away from the work done with partners in HSCP to try and reduce instances of drug deaths, but it's one of the tools that we are deploying in that area. The final thing I'd just like to touch on very briefly is willful fires, yet again another area that's kind of plagued this area over the years, and it's often one that's hard to predict. There's no obvious pattern where these fires take place. A lot of them can be bins setting fire by juveniles, some are more serious and organised and direct attacks on individuals with their cars are setting fire, but you'll note in the report that the detection rates for that are sadly quite low because they are very difficult to predict and detect. But in this reporting period, we've had significant increases thanks to a lot of work by our uniform and CID colleagues locally, and they've increased detections up to almost 28%. Compared with an average across the division in the force of 12%. So I think that's quite positive, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And we'll, again, our colleagues in the fire service, we'll get a lot more intelligence and information shared between us. It's a two-way street. We're a lot better at recording the crimes. I think historically, a lot of fires maybe wouldn't have been reported to the police if they were deemed very minor in nature. And obviously ourselves in the fire service recognise that the only way we can get a handle on these things is ethical reporting. So you will see an increase in the figures and that will increase. But I'd like to see that as a bit of a positive because we're doing that deliberately so we can work out where the fires are taking place and what steps ourselves and our colleagues there have to put in place to stop fires. So that's a brief overview. If there's any questions on that, I'm happy to take them.
Yes, I've got Councillor Daisley.
Thanks, Convener. Firstly, can I just say how welcome the future report on naloxone usage will be. If I can maybe ask for a bit of detail around that when it comes. I understand that we won't be able to speak about any specific cases around that, around any usage, but any anecdotal feedback would be very welcome just to give us context. I do have a specific just one question from page 12, which is around the drink and drug driving offences having increased by 35%. My question is there a breakdown of both of those? How is that made up? How's that 35, or how is it made up in terms of drink driving versus drug driving? And has there been any specific increase or decrease of either of those? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. We will have the figures. It's not one I have to hand, but anecdotally from what I've seen, we've always done drink driving campaigns. As you know, for many years we've been breathalyzing people. It's only in recent years we've actually started bringing a mechanism where we can actually test people for drug driving. We've always had, for many years, we've had legislation where we can prosecute since 1988 people for drink driving. We could also prosecute them for drug driving under Section 4 of the Road Traffic Act. But that was based on our observations. So it was a very imperfect way of prosecuting someone. It was based in cops, basically, and occasionally a police doctor looking at someone and determining do they appear to be under the influence of drink or drugs. So when you breathalyse someone and it was negative, and it was quite clear they were impaired, it relied on witness evidence. And you've probably seen a lot of the American states do the kind of roadside tests. We've adapted versions of that. Again, it works well, but it's an imperfect system. So what we've had more recently, I'm confident a lot of the detections that are shown here, the 35%, are going to be drug related. That's just because we're now using technology to their advantage to try and prove to a standard that's easy to prove in court, as opposed to questioning two constables who are speaking to someone being unsteady in their feet and slurring their speech. When we don't know that person's background, we don't know their disability status. We now have a lot greater detection capability through testing of drugs. I could certainly get you those figures. I don't have them today, but I think from what I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of people still drink drive
despite the fact it's been taboo for generations. But a lot of the detections I'm seeing come across my desk are due to local and traffic colleagues stopping vehicles proactively, and it's mainly drugs that I'm seeing, unfortunately.
Okay, Councillor Daisley, I'm sure the Chief Inspector will get those figures for you.
That would be really useful. Thanks very much for that answer as well.
Could I just ask one question as a follow-on from that? What sort of sentence do you get for being caught with drugs? Is it much the same as drinking and driving?
Yeah, I think the sentencing guidelines are pretty similar. I think because the impact on the drivers pretty identical. Drink and drugs, it just impairs the driver, creates risk. I couldn't tell you exactly what the guidelines are. It's been a long time since I was at Tillerland and learned that stuff, but
just so I'm aware. Come on. Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Yeah, just a couple of questions on the sort of reports in general. So when we're looking at, I think we had a bit there about the cyber-enabled crime, and obviously we've had the presentation. So I'm just trying to see where we see that in our reporting. So in terms of, so if, for instance, if we look at sexual crime, is that the total sexual crime including the cyber? And do you split that off? You know, because I think we're mentioning 3 areas under the cyber crime that there's a concern. So it's kind of to see the proportion of that in the totality. So that's my first point. I don't know if you want to answer that, and then I'll comment on if you want to too.
Thanks, Councillor. No, I'll answer that just now, if that's okay. So the sexual crime aspect is the totality of it, but you'll see in page 5 that the cyber crime enabled is split, and you've got the kind of pie chart there that shows you what the sexual element of that is. So that is broken down as well in relation to it, but anything on sexual crime, you use the totality and not in normal terms to record that.
Okay, but you can get that if you need. Sorry, if I will be able to know what percentage.
Yes,
just to establish if the cyber enabled is becoming a bigger.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So the other question I've got on, I remember because I used to be the vice convener of this committee, and we had a long discussion about recording drug deaths because we don't record numbers of any other victim. So it's trying to make sure that we're recording them as victims and not related to crime. So there was a whole question around that, and I think we had agreed that we would take out the number of drug deaths. Do you know what I mean? So it's just seeing it in there. It's kind of reared its head again about having that data in there and looking as if those people are victims of crime and not, you know, perpetrators or something.
Hi, Councillor, thanks for your question. I totally take your point. The reason we keep it in the report, and again, we'll be guided by the board itself. We're happy to report and change what we report on. The reason I would say that is it is a direct impact in our area of business. I mean, there's a lot of partners around the room that will impact and try to reduce drug deaths. I think it gives a clear picture that the drug problem hasn't went away. We've all worked really hard. Like, we do the drug enforcement side. That's our main impetus. We'll do drug searches. We'll do searches in the street. We'll try and deal with the criminal element. The part of the report that references drug death isn't about criminalising those that have died from drugs. That's not the point. The point is that the drug taking is still causing deaths. It's still an issue that we as the police can impact on, and we have a role. Like I said, I'll be absolutely be guided by yourselves. Maybe a discussion you would want to have away from this and come back to us. Personally, I think it does help to have it in there, only because I think it's relevant for how we deliver a service to Inverclyde, and because those figures are quite stark. There's nothing positive in those figures, like for the police or for the local community or for yourselves as councillors. I think it's pertinent that we acknowledge that the drug deaths are still a real issue, and it allows us to put sufficient focus on that so that we can do our bit to try and bring those numbers down. Because without these figures being recorded and made public in this forum, and the sort of transparency that this board looks to promote by live streaming these committees that previously wouldn't have been widely known about in the community, I think it's good in itself that we can have the public knowing that there's this number of people are sadly dying, and the people we name, again, there's no harm to the people intended at all, and we hope it don't cause any offence to families or upset. But I think it is very important. This really is a significant issue for Inverclyde that we need to talk about.
Can you make a background on that as well? Sorry. Obviously, the Scottish Government produce figures as well, so that they will become in the public domain. I think drug-related harm across Inverclyde needs to be a real focus, and it's certainly a focus for me. You know, every drug death is one too many, but perhaps actually understanding that the length of investigation and the means that we go to try and identify actually who's dealt the drugs to that individual that's sadly lost their life is our focus in terms of the investigation. You know, those investigations take a long period of time. By the time we're getting toxicology reports coming back, we do a lot of work around about phones and any other evidence that we seize whenever the death has occurred. But there's a lot of work goes on in the background to try and identify who those perpetrators are. Particularly, you know, we've seen it over the course of the years and in various areas about bad batches going out, and we work very closely with health colleagues if we're seeing a particular trend in terms of actually getting those prevention messages out at that time. But as Hamian said, happy to be you know, guided by the committee, but certainly it's going to remain a good focus and a clear focus for Police Scotland and Inverclyde.
You know, we're the worst country in Europe for drug deaths, but I'll give credit to the Scottish Government. They've not shied away from publishing the figures. You're quite right. We produce them month after month and they don't seem to get much better. But credit to them, they have published them. Sorry, Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I agree they should be seen there. It's just where they're seen. I think that's the sensitivity of it. You know, those individuals are more in the report when it's talking about recording the crimes. This is the measure to make sure that we're successful. I mean, we should keep an eye on the stats, but it's kind of where they fall in the report. That's probably my concern. Thanks.
If you're happy with that, I'll take an action just to go away and have a look at that and see how we could better word it in terms of where it's in the report, etc., and just see if we can soften that, I suppose, to a certain extent, so that we've still got the focus around about the harm that's caused, but soften the impact.
Still think we need to see the figure.
Yep.
Councillor Clougherty.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose one is a comment and the other one's a question related to what we've just been talking about. I suppose my comment is we're always dealing with the reporting period. So this reporting period is up to the 31st of December. The only problem is we've had the last 4 weeks, we've had such a horrendous week. And I think that we really need to comment on that and the amount of work both the fire service and the police service did. Over 5 days, I think we had a fatality up at the West Station, we had a homicide up in Markfield, we had the tugboat boat accident, and then to top all, you also have an Old Firm game, which is usually the busiest time that you've got over a weekend anyway. So it's really just putting record that we do recognise that at the time the reporting period for that comes out, we'll not forget about it, but it really was quite an intense period for the police and fire service down in Inverclyde. So it's just to put in my record our thanks for all the work that was done in that, because it must have been a really hard few days. It was so condensed into less than a week. So again, just thanks for that. My question on the back is really what you were talking about. I was fortunate enough to go down to the police station. I get invited down to Councillor Olsen before you say then, because of some of the comments I have made about the town centre and the drug in the town centre, and some that I'll probably come on about quite a lot. Because what Councillor Quinn says about the drug deaths, the unfortunate thing is, if we look at the figures, our detection rate looks as if it's going down. So even though we look as if, you know, I can only speak of my own area, that we're constantly seeing is putting doors down, making arrests, we know we've got a problem with cuckoo, and you know, we'll move from one place to another place. So we recognise that, but the detection level, especially when we hear about serious crime, whether it's the local drug gangs going down a wee bit and more external drug gangs moving into Inverclyde. So it's very hard to hear all of that through the grapevine and then hearing that detection rate is actually falling. So I don't know if you can possibly comment on that. And I realise you can only say so much within this forum.
Thank you for that, and I absolutely agree, Councillor. It goes back to the original point. So we have taken executive action that elected members will be aware of now, but it's out with the reporting period, and I would look to see that detection rate will significantly improve. There has been a long-running operation ongoing in the background in terms of the concerns, because it's remained a real focus and priority for us. But as I say, that's out with the reporting period, and we'll hopefully see that then a good improvement in the next reporting period.
Councillor, just on that, as the Commander said, some of the work that's been done that led to the arrest that will come on to in a later panel, these inquiries started back in 2022. It's been long-term investigations, and it's led to I won't spoil the surprise, but we'll give you the good news story. A number of arrests were made at a later date. But what you're right, so I think the part you're referring to is drug supply detections are 36 compared to an average of 44. You're correct, that is absolutely is a reduction. However, in context, and give you an assurance, there's been no let up in drug enforcement. As you put it, we've been through doors with search warrants day in, day out. You correctly said about the cuckooing. We've absolutely prioritised whether we think there's a true victim of cuckooing. That gets an immediate response, and it's not just local cops. We'll bring in people from elsewhere. You've probably seen the photographs of the public order, the right train cops. Make good use of them to get safely through doors and protect victims. But one of the other parts of the report, it references drug possession charges are now at 392, which is quite a significant increase. So when we take action through, get a warrant and search a drug dealer's house, we quite often find drugs, but they're not deemed sufficient, given case law, to libel a charge of drug dealing effectively. So now, if you look at the drug possession offences, it can quite often that can be we've stopped people in the street and found drugs, but increasingly that's where we go through a door with a warrant and we find drugs, but there's insufficient to prove the dealing charge. So if it makes sense, we execute the warrant as a positive outcome. We have found drugs, but given the way the law changes over the years, it becomes more and more difficult for us to meet the criteria required to libel that charge, if it makes sense. So just to give you the assurance, there's been no reduction in the number of warrants executed. We're still a priority for Remshire and Inverclyde and Police Scotland as a whole. And if you see, we'll go into the local police plans, drug enforcement is going to be a key part of that in relation to serious organised crime. So we'll give you that commitment. We're still going to be executing warrants day in, day out. And that's part of the reason why there's such an increase in drug possession charge, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah.
Councillor Crowther.
Thank you, Convener. It's just to seek a wee bit of clarification. As the reports that we have before us, I noticed that the starting period on them appears to be the 1st of April. And when we talk about the year to date, it is here in the complaints about the police that it gives that period April to December, and also when we look at the protecting people, again, it mentioned April to December. So I take it when you refer it in the report year to date, it is from, in every instance, is from the 1st of April.
Yes,
that's
what
right.
it is.
Question number one, just to get clarification on that.
Yeah, our performance reporting period runs from the 1st of April to the 31st of March every year. So when we talk about the year to date, it's always from the 1st of April that year.
Okay, that's lovely. The second part is to do with you know, the drugs and the alcohol, and it's where we have an RTC, and it's my understanding that everyone would be breathalyzed, but that would then be that you would determine whether they are over the alcohol limit. Is it compulsory that they would also they should also be drugs tested, or is that left up to the discretion of the officers that are attend the RPC?
No, you're correct. There is the option to use the drug testing kits. It's more standard to test for drink driving. As a matter of course, that's something we've done for a very long time.
Yeah. Okay, that's lovely. The last one there, everyone just, I've been looking at the complaints about the police. I know exactly what the YTD is year to date, but there are two other terms there that I noticed was LY, Lima Yankee Tango Delta, and there was one there that was Papa Yankee Tango Delta. It's just about, what do they actually mean? Pardon my ignorance.
So LYTD is last year to date.
Last year to date.
Last year to date, and PYTD is previous year to date. Very similar.
Okay, that's fine, that's lovely. Now, just on that one there, I do notice that on the table, there's a service delivery, and it says that the previous year to date was 3, but the year to date was 10, and it says that the percentage change was 233.3%. But just quickly looking at the figures, it's in excess of 3 times that. So should the figure not be in excess of 300%? I haven't done a quick calculation, I'm just looking at.
Neither have I, councillor, but I will check that now, now that you've said it. But certainly we've had a significant increase in terms of the service delivery complaints that we've received, which, you know, there's two thought processes to that. I'm always encouraged by the public coming forward if they're not happy with how we've delivered our service. I want to hear about that, and I want my officers to continually improve. So really encouraged by people having the confidence to come forward. But clearly every service delivery complaint that we receive, that's not something that I want to have either. So yeah, let me have a wee look at that and I'll come back to you in terms of their critique.
What a great answer. Give me the bad news. I'll sort that. Very good. Any other questions, colleagues? Jim, are you finished?
Sorry. Yes, Chair. I'm finished.
Councillor Reynolds. Sorry, I didn't see you in the. Yes, I see your hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. I'm just following on from Councillor Daisley's comments and question. Again, to the police, congratulations on the rollout of the naloxone programme. It's an excellent initiative. My question is around data. Having worked on and off in community pharmacy for 40 years, then I am just wondering if it's possible to get data on the age groups of the drug deaths, a broad band. I know you can't narrow it down because that might individualise it and mean that people might be identified. Also, when we did the naloxone training and looked at the data, methadone. Sorry, Councillor Wilson, is it?
No, thank you. I was getting the officers were speaking in my ear. I think Hugh Scott's going to handle what you said, if that's okay.
Could I finish?
Yes.
Your report mentions cocaine, etizolam, one of the benzos and heroin, but doesn't mention methadone. And in the last data we were looking at, there was a significant number of methadone patients identified in drug deaths. So I'm just wondering, like I say, I've worked in community pharmacy on and off over 40 years, and a lot of the methadone patients in Inverclyde are now, ageing and have complex health conditions. So it'd be quite interesting if that data was available about what groups of our residents are affected by the drug deaths.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Mr. Scott.
For yourself, Convener, I think most of that information will be able to be provided through the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership and directly to that committee, and that HSEP officers will give you more up-to-date information that we've got within our current system, if that was helpful.
That's great. Thanks, Hugh.
Thanks, Councillor. I think Mr. Scott's covered the main part of your question, but you're making a point that methadone has been one of the drugs. I think they keep it. I know there's some drugs mentioned there, and they are just examples, but I think the key message about drug-related deaths are it's polydrug use is still the main cause of drug-related death. So although we have named a number of specific drug types to give a bit of context, we could probably fill a page with the number of drugs that are found. There's a variety of found. We include alcohol as one of the drugs that's often found in a deceased person after drug-related death. And methadone, there's significant risks in taking that, as I'm sure you're well aware. I don't know if it starts in front of me. I have no doubt that will be a contributory factor in at least some of the deaths.
Thank you, Chief Inspector.
I'm sure it was, but I was also kind of honing in on the fact that quite a lot of our methadone patients are in quite a high age bracket now. Like I say, still see some of them like 30, 40 years on. And they have complex health conditions as well, which makes them more vulnerable.
Okay. No more questions. Thank you very much, everybody. We move on to New business, agenda item number 6, the local police fire scrutiny annual update report at page 15 with the recommendations at 2.0. Chief Superintendent, you wish to introduce this before I move on to Mr. Scott?
Thanks, convener. Maybe if I start first and then I'll introduce you, if that's okay.
Whichever way around.
That's my job.
Sorry. There's a story there.
Do you want to sit here?
No, thank you. Sorry.
Carry on.
Thanks very much, convener. Just the story will come across easier and I'll be able to get feedback from our colleagues in the police. So within this report is an update of national and local initiatives that will have an effect on the panel going forward. We've got reports within here from our national bodies, from Police Scotland and also from Fire and Rescue Scotland. As the convener's reckoned, we're asking for the panel to note the current engaging national initiatives within the police and fire rescue matters, note the response to consultancy from the Scottish Police Authorities in corporate strategy, and also note the local policing plan, which we'll come on to, and also from that we'll give an agreement to approve the draft plan, which our colleagues from Police Scotland will present once it's through the paper. That's okay. Within the paper, the body of the paper, again on 3.1 is just an update on what we've put back to the Scottish SPA and the feedback from the council on the comments to that plan, and that's been included in there, and that will be given more details of that back to the next part. 4.1 of the plan is the new local police plan for 2023, which my colleague will come in and talk about. Just to endorse the plan before we get more information, is that we fully support the plan. We work very closely with our colleagues, especially a big thanks to Russ Gilliam, my team leader, for working very closely with our colleagues. What's highlighted in the plan is that in 4.4 and how that matches our local community safety plan, and how that will tie into the key elements of our plan matching the policing plan. And I'm happy to bring my colleague in from Scotland.
Thank you. Chief Superintendent, Commander.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. So Inverclyde Local Policing Plan, it's actually the Chief's plan, folks, but delighted to introduce it to you today, and it's for 2023 to 2026. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to read through it as part of the consultation process, and you've had an opportunity to provide feedback in advance of today. We have taken the time to re-examine our priorities on the back of the pandemic, and conscious very much of the cost of living crisis that we're currently in the midst of as well. So we maintain that we are committed to providing the highest level of service to our communities across Inverclyde, and we'll do that using our local policing teams, including response officers, community policing, CID, public protection, our AFRU, supported by our national divisions like Specialist Crime Division, Road Policing Unit, etc. We're also really committed to working with our partners, including the third sector, and through our community planning process to deliver our priorities for the next 3 years. There's strong foundations already in place, and we propose to build on them, but we do have a statutory responsibility under the Police and Fire Reform Act to work closely with Inverclyde Local Authority, and I'm happy to see that those relationships are already in place, and we continue to do that. We've got building close alliances with other local communities, partners, both in the public and the private sector, and the third sector that I've already mentioned as set out in the Community Empowerment Act. So ultimately our aim is to work with and provide work with pride, diligence and professionalism to ensure Renfrewshire and Inverclyde remain safe places to work, live and visit. So I just propose, convener, if you don't mind, I'll just cover off the strategic alignment and then open it up for questions if that's okay. So obviously Scottish Government set the national priorities and outcomes, and Police Scotland set their strategy from that. We've got a long-term policing strategy, which is policing for a safe, protected and resilient Scotland, and underneath that we have a number of enabler strategies like people, fleet, estates, equality, diversity and inclusion. All of those are underpinned by our strategic workforce plan, our annual police plan. This is where our local police plans come into it, and obviously the local outcome improvement plans along with our financial plans. And through the consultation process, we've now delivered that our local priorities as per the local policing plan are violence, disorder and antisocial behaviour, protecting vulnerable people, acquisitive cyber and digital crime, serious and organised crime, and road safety and road crime. And members will have seen within the plan that we've broken that down into a plan on a page, and it gives you the local objectives and activity that we propose to take place over the next 3 years, and also the milestones. There's been an extensive consultation process, and it's been part of your police survey, which has been open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And that commenced away back in April 2021 and took us right up until September 2022. We use the COSLA guidance in relation to writing our local policing plan, and as Mr Scott has highlighted, we've had close engagement with Ross Scullion, and Ross has fed back their feedback on behalf of the local authority. So that once published, and if approved today, that the Scrutiny Committee is the governance process for it. And once published, if you are content, it will be published on the 1st of April, and there'll be 2 impact assessments will be published at the same time, a general one and an environmental assessment at that time as well. And if I may, I'm just going to take this opportunity. I know DCC Graham wrote to all elected members recently, and yourself as convener. You will recall that we did scrutiny engagement last year and brought in some of the national divisions. We're doing that again this year, and I think the West region kicks off in April time. So I would encourage any elected members that didn't make it to last year's sessions, you get something similar to what you received today in terms of cyber and the kind of national aspect that we can that come and support local policing on a daily basis. And we'll speak more about that in the next reporting period when we cover off the busy times that we've had in recent weeks and the national support that we had during that time. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent. Mr Scott, would you like to add to that at all?
No, just obviously we had some concerns that was raised by our consultancy with our colleagues in Police Scotland, and they've now been answered. So under 4.5, so thanks very much for doing that. Just on the point that colleagues have said, 5.1 is the new scrutiny framework, and you'll see within 5.5 that will now be the new process for us reporting through the panel, and just for you to endorse that. We already took that to committee previously, and it's been endorsed from COSLA and Police Authority. So just say that our framework, very similar to the police framework, will now be in the same format. If that's okay with the committee.
Thank you. No, I think it's an excellent work. Please pass our thanks on to Ross Scullion, would you? Any questions? Councillor Moran.
Hi, thank you. I've got 2, one for the police and one for Mr Scott, if that's all right. Like most of us, we received a letter from the Scottish Police Federation, and one of the things saying, what are your concerns for policing, given the reduction in the police numbers to 16,600? Well, the letter I received from the Chief Constable as well, he's saying that because of recruitment delays, executive off number are lower than previous years and around 60,600. Our funding allocation means that our officer established will be around 16,600, including 200 officers currently funded out of the core of the government servant. We are building a service to reflect this. Officers staff demonstrate professional dedication and goodwill every day all across Scotland. Their safety and well-being is a key consideration. It would not be reasonable for me to ask fewer people to deliver the same level of service without implementing the changes to support these needs. So my question would be, is a reduction in police numbers? I don't think there's any possibility of it not. So will we get the same service that we've always had, or will be a revision of what the services that we get at the moment? I'm going to go with these 2 letters. Actually, I don't know the answer myself, so maybe Chief Superintendent.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Moran. I received that letter, so does my Deputy, the Provost, and we crafted a reply to it. We were concerned about finance for Police Scotland and the drop in numbers, and there has been a significant drop in numbers, and that we felt that here in Inverclyde we certainly could not afford any further drop. But I'll leave you, Chief Superintendent, to answer Councillor Moran.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Councillor. I'll answer it the best I can at this moment in time. I obviously shared the Chief Constable's letter with you all yesterday. I'm grateful for any feedback in relation to that. We are in the unfortunate position that although the flat cash budget that was highlighted to Police Scotland, we received more than that. We haven't received enough to be able to maintain our numbers at 17,234. So the Chief Constable at this moment in time is at SPA board at the Scottish Police Authority Board, advising of what our budget and finance plan looks like for the forthcoming year. Now, as a result, we've ran with a number of vacancies over the period. As the Chief has highlighted in the letter, recruitment slowed down during the pandemic due to pension changes, rules in the pension change. We've seen a lot more people retire earlier than we anticipated. So we are running already with gaps, and we're at the very early stages now of working out. We can't keep doing everything that we've been doing up until this point, and collectively as an organisation with the executive, working together to work out local policing remains a priority for the Chief. So he's got three top priorities, and local policing is one of them. So it's working about where can we manage best the threat, risk and harm in terms of any gaps that we've got for the future. But until the Chief, and I'm sure that the comms will come out for this later today, obviously that's all the information I've got at the moment in terms of the letter that he's written out to you. But there will be further information, I would imagine, will come out from the board today.
Thank you. You okay, Councillor?
Well, I really appreciate it. It's early days yet, but I thought it was important that we highlighted it.
Yeah, I think it was very apt that we got a letter from the Chief Constable and one from the Police Federation. I think, colleagues, that shows the importance of this committee and how people do listen to us. And we've seen in the last 6 months the extent to which the fire service and the police service take it seriously with the different presentations we've had. I don't see any more questions.
Yeah, I take the one from Mr. Scott when I said to you.
Oh, sorry.
If you go to page 23, it's the principle for scrutiny, and it said that the elected member is no scrutiny, which is for the recruitment service, and there's a shorter notebook again produced by the recruitment service. Well, I've sat in board a long time and I've never seen one of these books, quite honest with you. And there is a degree of training that takes place. You sit in the planning board, you sit in the licence board, and then you get this degree of training. And I've never seen much training for a scrutiny board, which I think is a miss because it's a very, very important board. They provide a very, very important role. But more importantly, that I tried going to that recruitment service and I couldn't access any of two notebooks. I would ask our officers to try to contact them, and if these scrutiny books are available, they download enough for every single member of this committee receives one, because it's there to assist us in our role as scrutiny. So I would ask the officers, maybe they'll better luck than me, to contact the recruitment service and to find these books, because it says it's constructive political leadership, effective organisation of the scrutiny function, officer support, training and development, which I don't know if I've ever had any, planning and focus, working with others and scrutiny skills. Such an important document should be in our hands. We should have some training on it. So going forward, we're in a position to do the job that we're elected to do. So that was my point.
I think it's
get back and get these books and get us some training on.
A very good point. Tony and Hugh, can we leave you to do something down those lines, please?
Yeah,
and
for yourself.
perhaps come back to us with a report.
Yeah, we'll certainly make sure that we can get a link to these books as soon as we possibly can and get out to all members of the board.
And maybe a training plan.
And maybe a training plan, we'll speak to improvement service and what that is, how we can endorse that.
Okay with that, Councillor Moran?
I'm very happy. Thank you.
I've got one question on the chat from Councillor Maguire.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. So first of all, I just want to say that reading through the local policing plan, I welcome there are several things that I welcome, but I'm just going to point out a couple. I welcome the defibrillators in cars. I think that that's going to be valuable to our community, and I also welcome the promotion of the Disclosure Scotland scheme for domestic abuse. However, I do have 3 questions about the plan. So on page 39, you've got the very succinct, I would call it a table. Under outcome 3, the public, communities and partners are engaged, involved and have confidence in policing. There's a bit there that talks about having accessible policing. Then I take that as meaning that the accessibility via 101 is going to increase for our local community. So that's my first question. My next question is around the drugs and drug-related deaths on page 45. Is there any plans to do partnership work in schools as part of that? And finally, page 47, I'm really welcome seeing online bullying as being part of your local policing plan. I know that bullying is something that plagues especially our teenage population and younger members of society. So I was just wondering, is there any plans for the police to tackle bullying in person, or as some people would call it, abuse in person?
Can you take a couple of those, please?
Yeah, for yourself, just on the work in schools, it was previously been reported to education communities about the new project we've got with alcohol and drugs workers, 4 new workers going into schools, probably starting from the new term, from the academic term later on in the year, to address prevention education around drugs and alcohol. Maybe my colleagues from Police Scotland to take some of the other questions.
Aye, thanks for that. As you said, I didn't catch all the questions, Councillor. I'm going to be honest. I caught some of it in terms of the partnership working in schools. As you said, we do work with them in Ross in particular, and we have got some kind of expertise in the police that we've already shared, and we want to continue sharing with the CLAD workers and other youth workers. And you're right, it's the right place for us to be doing preventive work in schools. I didn't pick up your other questions, I'm afraid. Would you mind repeating them?
Yeah, my second question was around online bullying. About, is there any plans for doing any work around in-person bullying or in-person abuse, especially of younger people? And my other question was around 101. Under outcome 3, it talks about increased accessibility for people. So is that saying that the police are committed to increasing accessibility of 101 to individuals across our community?
You're off the hook, Chief Inspector. Tony.
Thanks, Samira. Thanks, Councillor Maguire. I kind of referred earlier as well to the tackling bullying policies that exist in each of the schools. So any aspects of bullying, whether it be cyberbullying or in-person bullying, will be dealt with through the existing policies within the schools.
Okay, so can I ask a supplementary just on that, please?
Yeah.
If there's the policy that deals with all the bullying through schools, whether it's online or in person, does that mean then that the police don't get involved with that element of bullying that is purely upon the local authority to ensure that this isn't happening?
Councillor Maguire kind of answered that earlier on in the meeting. It was about we do, if there's any aspect of any potential criminality, then we will involve the police for anything, not even if it's not related to bullying. But we do work very closely with our police colleagues. We're conscious that we don't want to criminalise young people either. So we need to deal with it sensitively. But if there is anything that's escalating beyond the school gates, I would have to say, even if it's extended into the community, our schools are still very good and interested in tackling those issues if it's having an impact of young people in school.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking is purely from the Police Scotland point of view of them tackling the bullying element of it. Of course, I don't want young people to be criminalised, but I'm talking about when it goes beyond what schools can deal with. That's what I was meaning. But I can take that question offline. So I'm getting a feeling of discomfort in the room. So can I have the question about 101 answered, please?
Hi, Councillor. Just thought what Tony said. I think your point is that the school can only deal with elements of bullying that occur during the school working week. As Tony said, there is a very strong policy in place. you're correct. The cyberbullying, unfortunately, was pointed out earlier on, does follow kids home. I think it was Councillor Moran who mentioned this. Absolutely right. The cyberbullying does extend the reach of bullies to their victims. But again, as we've all agreed, we're not keen to be criminalising kids where it's not appropriate. However, we do have daily link-in through the Partnership Hub and through my community inspector with Michael Roach, who's a member of the Council's Education. We've got community officer constable link-in with the schools and the school heads. We're basically at the end of a phone, the end of an email. If we have queries where there's a question mark over is this criminality, does it need to involve the police, or simply we just need a bit of advice and guidance from the police, we're there, and we actually do that pretty much every morning. We have that link in, we're always available, we're on first name terms with the head teachers. Likewise, Michael Roach is very good at picking up on these items. We don't often get involved in criminalising kids in relation to bullying, but we do, as was pointed out again, I think by Councillor Moran earlier in the meeting, we do recognise that it can be really, really detrimental to the children of the victims. So we are very robust in how we deal with it. But like I say, Tony's or the Council's policy in general is very robust, and we're happy to support that any way we can. I think your next question was regarding accessibility in relation to 101.
Yeah.
I don't think it's any secret there's been challenges with the 101 over the years. They've been quite well publicised. The 101, we suffered real issues with that around the pandemic. Like every big organisation with a lot of staff off, that wasn't the sole causal factor, being honest. 101 response times have improved. But what we're finding is, and this is something that's quite relevant for the front page of the police report, which I could have covered earlier, if you note the mass or significant reduction in incidents, these are basically generated by people phoning the police, but what we're finding is, as I've described with education and schools, a lot of our communication doesn't rely on somebody phoning 101 or 999. We get a lot of email contact, we get a lot of correspondence in that way, with people visiting the Greenock Police Office, which sadly is one of the few offices we have. We still have 24 hours a day, but we do have a lot of communication coming in that way. So 101 is just one of the many routes that people phone in. We do get an increasing number every year of emails in. So it's just to give you that reassurance that 101 is not, in time, I don't think that will be the primary method of contacting the police. I think the public will use 999, which is answered very quickly for emergencies and urgent response. But increasingly, we'd encourage people to report via the Partnership Hub or via emails to their local community policing team if they're looking for a slower time response. I hope that covers your question.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to say I wasn't questioning the robustness of the Inverclyde Council policy. I know what the Inverclyde Council policy is. It was just to make sure that that wider response was going to be there, because online bullying specifically had been mentioned. And thank you for encouraging us with the improvements of 101. And thanks, convener, for letting me come in again.
Our pleasure. Robust. We like the word robust, Chief Inspector. Hugh?
Yeah, just the last thing on the paper for yourself, convener, again, is picking up what my colleagues, Police Scotland already said about the violence against women strategy for girls and engagement. And just to be able to let members aware that we are still reviewing our own policy locally, and that'll be a paper taken back to the Alliance Board in June to see whether that endorses and do that. So maybe if we just wait for that to be done through the Alliance Board, and then maybe the next time we bring that back, if that was okay.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. Mrs. Quinn.
And they're quick and thought about it.
I was on a roll there.
40 pounds doing the hammer. So I'm kind of sneaking this in because I'm not sure where else I can sneak it in under 6.0. So just under the violence against women and girls. So I've been fortunate enough to work with the Humanity Project, which is a martial arts female-based charity, and Your Voice just across the road. And they are doing self-defence classes for women. So we're doing 6 classes. So it's going to start next Thursday, 30th of March, and it'll be every fortnight. And we're visiting every locality in Inverclyde, the 6 localities. So it's just a wee shout out. If you go onto Your Voice's social media pages, and if we could share them wide and encourage as many women and girls to come along. It's open to all age groups, only under 14 may be accompanied by an adult, and hopefully this will empower some of our women and girls to get back out there, keep active and feel more safe in our community. Thanks.
Very creditable, Councillor Quinn. I hope you get success with it. And at that, I'm going to draw the matters to a close. I take you to page 15. And sorry, Chief Superintendent, You sneaking one in as well?
Convener, sorry about this, but can I just clarify then, just in terms of the local policing plan, is it elected members and yourself happy to approve?
I was just about to do that.
Apologies.
Before you and Councillor Quinn interrupted me. Colleagues, under recommendations, we are asked to note the current and emerging national issues relating to police and fire and rescue matters, note the responses to the consultations on the draft Police Authority corporate strategy and the draft local policing plan, and most importantly, approve the draft local policing plan. Are we happy to do so? Unanimous? There you are, Chief Superintendent. Was that what you were after?
Thanks, Convener, yes.
Thank you. I would just like to thank Commanders Story and McCarry for this afternoon, to Chief Inspector Kane and Chief Superintendent Waddle. Thank you very much for attending today. Thank you to the officers, and thank you, colleagues, for a 2-hour meeting. Thank you.